Most people think financial stress disappears when you make more money. They're wrong. There's a specific moment, long before wealth, long before success, when panic quietly shuts off and your life starts to feel stable. Almost no one talks about it. It's 3:07 a.m. You're awake, staring at the ceiling, and your mind is doing that thing it always does at night, replaying every possible way your life could quietly fall apart tomorrow. Not in a dramatic, movie scene kind of way, but in the realistic way that actually scares you. Your car might make that noise again. Your laptop could finally give up. Your boss might say, "Can we talk later?" Your rent, your bills, your credit card balance, all lining up in your head like dominoes, waiting for one small push. Nothing bad has happened yet. But your body doesn't care. Your chest feels tight. Your thoughts won't slow down. And somewhere deep down, there's this constant fear that one small mistake, one unexpected expense, could knock you off balance completely. If this feels familiar, listen carefully. This isn't because you're irresponsible. It's not because you're bad with money. And it's not because you don't work hard enough. It's because you're living in financial survival mode. When you don't have savings, your brain treats money like oxygen. Every dollar matters too much. Every decision feels heavy. Even simple choices, groceries, gas, going out with friends, turn into quiet negotiations with yourself. Can I afford this, or will I regret it later? That mental noise follows you everywhere. It drains your energy. It shapes your decisions. And slowly, without you even noticing, it shrinks your world. Welcome to Quietly Broke, the place where we talk about the money stress no one wants to admit out loud. Here's the question most people never stop to ask. What if there was a specific amount of money that didn't make you rich, but made your mind finally feel safe? Not $1 million. Not financial freedom. Just enough to stop the panic. Because once that panic shuts off, everything else changes: how you sleep, how you decide, how you move through life. If you want more conversations like this, honest, uncomfortable, and actually useful, take a second to subscribe to Quietly Broke. It helps the channel grow and gives me the motivation to keep making videos like this. Before we go further, I want you to answer this in the comments. Be honest. A. Financial stress comes from not earning enough money. B. Financial stress comes from not having a safety buffer. Comment A or B below. If that constant tension feels familiar, the next question is unavoidable. What actually turns it off? Most people assume the answer is more money, a higher salary, a better job title, a bigger number on the paycheck. But if that were true, high earners wouldn't lie awake at night running the same anxious mental loops. And yet, many of them do. Here's where our understanding of money is fundamentally flawed. Financial milestones aren't just status symbols. They aren't arbitrary numbers designed to impress other people. Certain amounts of money create real psychological shifts, because they change how your brain perceives risk. And the first meaningful shift doesn't happen at $1 million. It doesn't even happen at 100,000. It happens much earlier, at a number most people underestimate: $10,000. Not because $10,000 lets you buy anything extraordinary. Most people who reach it don't upgrade their lifestyle at all. They don't start flying first class or ordering expensive bottles of wine. From the outside, almost nothing changes. But internally, everything does. When you have no savings, every decision feels fragile. A new job feels dangerous. Taking time off feels irresponsible. Investing in yourself feels reckless. Because one wrong move could leave you exposed. Your brain stays locked in defense mode, scanning for threats, avoiding risk at all costs. With $10,000 quietly sitting in the background, that threat level drops. You don't feel rich. You don't feel carefree. What you feel is something far more subtle, stable. There's real science behind this. Financial insecurity keeps your body in a chronic stress response, elevating cortisol, the hormone tied to anxiety and hypervigilance. Your nervous system is constantly preparing for impact. When a basic safety buffer exists, that alarm system finally turns down. A car warning light no longer feels like the beginning of a financial collapse. It's annoying, but solvable. An unexpected bill doesn't trigger panic, it triggers problem solving. This distinction matters more than most people realize. Panic narrows your thinking. It forces short-term decisions. It makes you cling to situations you've outgrown simply because they feel familiar. Stability does the opposite. It gives your brain enough space to think past tomorrow. $10,000 doesn't make you bold. It doesn't make you reckless. It simply gives you permission to stop operating like everything is about to fall apart. And once that fear loosens its grip, the way you make decisions begins to change in ways that are quiet, invisible, and incredibly powerful. Once that fear quiets down, something deeper begins to surface, and this is the part almost nobody talks about. The real power of saving your first $10,000 has very little to do with emergencies, and almost everything to do with identity. From the outside, an emergency fund looks passive. The money just sits there. It doesn't earn applause. It doesn't change how you dress or where you go on weekends. Most of the time, it isn't touched at all. And that's exactly the point. The value isn't in spending the money. The value is in knowing it exists. When that cushion is there, your relationship with risk changes in a way that's hard to explain until you experience it. You stop treating every decision like a potential disaster. You stop asking, "What if this goes wrong?" and start asking, "Is this worth it?" That shift sounds small, but it changes everything. You negotiate differently because you're no longer desperate. You walk away from situations that drain you because you can afford to say no. You invest in yourself, a course, a skill, a credential, without the quiet terror that one mistake will ruin you. This is what $10,000 really buys: optionality. And here's the part most people get wrong. Saving that amount isn't primarily a financial challenge. It's a psychological one. Most people don't struggle with saving because they lack information. They struggle because saving requires them to become someone they don't yet see themselves as. Someone who plans ahead. Someone who delays gratification. Someone who thinks in years instead of weeks. That identity shift is uncomfortable. It forces you to confront habits that once felt harmless. Impulse spending, emotional spending, treating every paycheck like permission to reset the scoreboard. This is why so many people try to save aggressively for a few months, then burn out and quit. They approach saving like a punishment instead of a transformation. They focus on the restriction, not the person they're becoming. The people who reach $10,000 do something different. They don't obsess over how much they're saving each month. They focus on consistency. They build systems that remove emotion from the process. And slowly, almost without noticing, their self-image changes. Saving the first $1,000 feels brutal because it demands constant willpower. You have to say no again and again. But once the habits are in place, each additional $1,000 requires less effort. By the time you're halfway there, saving no longer feels like sacrifice. It feels normal. At some point, you cross an invisible line. You stop seeing money as something that slips through your fingers, and start seeing it as something you can hold on to. And when that happens, your decisions stop being reactive. They become intentional. $10,000 doesn't turn you into a different person overnight, but it proves something powerful. You're capable of creating stability. You're capable of protecting your future self. And that belief quietly reshapes how you move through the world. Once you've internalized that identity, money stops being a source of fear and starts becoming a tool. Once you stop reacting to money emotionally and start seeing it as a tool, the question naturally shifts from who you are to what that stability actually allows you to do in real life. This is where $10,000 stops being an abstract idea and starts changing outcomes. Most financial setbacks don't ruin people because they're massive. They ruin people because they arrive when there's no margin. A car repair, a medical bill, an unexpected trip, a short gap between jobs. None of these are rare, and none of them are catastrophic on their own. What makes them devastating is timing. They show up when there's nothing to absorb the impact. $10,000 changes that math. It doesn't make problems disappear, but it prevents them from snowballing. A car issue becomes a logistical problem instead of a financial emergency. You fix it, move on, and your life doesn't collapse around it. A medical surprise is stressful, but it doesn't force you into debt or desperate decisions. Even something as scary as losing a job becomes survivable, because you've bought yourself time. And time is the most underrated asset in personal finance. Time means you don't have to accept the first bad opportunity that comes along. It means you can be selective instead of frantic. It means you can think in weeks and months instead of days. That breathing room alone changes the trajectory of your career and your income far more than most raises ever will. But the real shift isn't just protection from downside. It's access to upside. Without savings, opportunities feel like threats. A certification that could increase your income feels risky because it costs money up front. A networking event feels wasteful because you're focused on immediate expenses. A new path feels reckless because you can't afford to fail. With $10,000 behind you, those same choices look completely different. They're no longer gambles. They're calculated risks. You start investing in things that compound over time. Skills, relationships, credibility. You say yes to opportunities that your old self would have avoided. Not because you're suddenly confident, but because you're no longer cornered. This is why someone with moderate income and solid savings often outpaces someone with high income and no buffer. The high earner is trapped maintaining appearances and covering commitments. The saver has flexibility, and flexibility is what creates leverage. At this point, money stops feeling like something that disappears every month. It starts feeling like something that works for you, quietly in the background, supporting better decisions. $10,000 doesn't make your life perfect. It doesn't eliminate stress entirely, but it shifts your default state from constant defense to quiet readiness. And that shift is what allows progress to finally take hold, not through dramatic changes, but through steady, intentional choices that stack up over time. And when those steady, intentional choices start to stack, you begin to notice something that has nothing to do with numbers on a screen. Life feels quieter. $10,000 doesn't announce itself. It doesn't change how you look from the outside. You're not suddenly free from responsibility. And you're definitely not rich. You still compare prices. You still think twice before spending. You still live within limits. But the difference is internal. You're no longer holding your breath every time you check your bank account. You're no longer scanning your life for the next thing that might go wrong. The background hum of financial anxiety, the one that used to follow you everywhere, starts to fade. That breathing room does something powerful. When you're not constantly stressed, you sleep better. When you sleep better, you think more clearly. When you think more clearly, you make better decisions, not heroic decisions, ordinary ones. And those are the decisions that quietly shape the direction of your life. This is why $10,000 matters. Not because it's impressive, but because it creates space between you and your fears. Space to respond instead of react. Space to plan instead of scramble. If you're nowhere near that number right now, that doesn't mean you've failed. It just means you're earlier in the story. You don't reach this point through dramatic sacrifices or sudden discipline. You reach it through consistency. Through small choices repeated long enough to change who you are. The real milestone isn't the balance itself. It's the moment you realize you're no longer operating from panic. You're no longer surviving one paycheck at a time. You're building something, even if it's invisible to everyone else. $10,000 isn't the finish line. It's the moment you step off the treadmill. And once you've experienced that shift, once you know what it feels like to move through life without constant financial fear, you don't go back. What this entire journey really reveals is something most people never hear when they're stressed about money. Financial progress doesn't begin with growth. It begins with stability. Before investing, before side hustles, before big plans for the future, there is a quieter and far more important phase, creating enough safety to think clearly. Without that foundation, every decision is distorted by fear. You don't choose what's best for you. You choose what helps you survive another month. And over time, that survival mindset becomes a cage. It keeps you busy, exhausted, and reactive, even if your income slowly increases. Saving your first meaningful buffer, like $10,000, isn't about becoming wealthy. It's about reclaiming your mental space. It's about turning constant anxiety into manageable problems, and panic into perspective. Once that happens, money stops being the enemy you're fighting and becomes a tool you're learning to use. You start planning instead of guessing. You start choosing instead of avoiding. And most importantly, you start trusting yourself. The deeper lesson here is simple but uncomfortable. Peace comes before progress. If you try to build wealth on top of chaos, it collapses. But if you build calm first, even slowly, everything else becomes easier to sustain. So how do you apply this right now? You don't need to obsess over a big number. Start by creating a small buffer and protecting it. Automate saving, even if it's modest. Treat stability as a non-negotiable expense, not a leftover. Focus less on speed and more on consistency. Over time, you'll notice the shift, not just in your account, but in how you think, sleep, and decide. Before we wrap up, I'd love to hear from you. What do you think matters more right now in your life? Building a safety buffer, or increasing your income? Comment your answer below so others can see different perspectives. And if this video resonated with you, please consider subscribing to Quietly Broke. It helps support the channel and gives me the motivation to keep creating honest, meaningful content like this for you.